Hello everyone and welcome to a Still Wakes the Deep lore and theory dive for the base game and the DLC, Siren's Rest. I hope you enjoy. Based in the 1970s during Scotland's tensions with the British government involving oil wealth and the discovery of an oil deposit in the North Sea, we delve into the story of one of these workers of the oil rig, the Beirda D. Cameron Kaz McCleary, an electrician who quickly got hired on by his way of connections with his friend and now fellow crewmate, Roy McNair, is trying to flee the authorities after he assaulted the man Billy Chamberlain. Kaz's wife Susan, or Suze McCleary, is distraught by his actions and leaving his two daughters so suddenly. With the talk of divorce as he receives letters from Susan on the Beirda D, he is called into the office of David Rennick, the installation manager. As Kaz makes his way to the office, it can be overheard that the drill has hit an unexplained blockage. Once Kaz is in the office of Rennick, he commands them to continue drilling over the phone, but more on that later. As Kaz enters the office of Rennick, it is quickly discovered that Rennick has been informed by the police of Kaz's wrongdoings and is immediately terminated. Kaz is told to leave effective immediately, as the helicopter is ready to take him back to the mainland for him to face justice. As the walls close in on Kaz, the drill finally makes it past the blockage, and a rumble in the depths shake the oil rig, causing Gregor, one of the workers on the helicopter landing pad, to slip over the edge and fall into the depths. Kaz, right on the edge trying to help, witnesses it all and soon falls in himself as another seismic shock knocks him off as well. Kaz then experiences a flashback, which could be mistaken as something only the player experiences, but due to the cadence of how it appears, color disorientation, and almost oil spill-like effect along with the information we piece together later, it can be theorized that this isn't just a flashback, but images being shown to him by the shape that has been woken from the deep. Kaz is woken up from being unconscious in the water and nearly drowning. He heads outside to get his bearings. He sees a diving bell that Rafts is inside of and is shaking violently, as if something is inside, trying to get out. After helping secure the diving bell, Kaz continues traversing through the oil rig and must traverse underneath, where he finds that it is progressively deteriorating at an accelerated rate, which is where he first sees the shape, spiraling around the drill like tendrils of muscle and tendons on bone, shining an array of colors and light. This is Kaz's first time seeing what the drill actually hit. An unknown entity or creature with, as of right now, unknown effects that will only be shown as horrors unfold. Fast forwarding a bit, Kaz meets Finley again from the beginning of the game, who warns him about Gibbo, both crewmates he knows personally, and one he used to call friend. Finley warns him that Gibbo isn't quite the same, as his echoes of pain and anger can be heard throughout the bowels of the oil rig, Finley mentioning that Gibbo was exposed to oil or something, and he started to become hostile. Kaz, having no other way in reaching accommodations, must traverse through where Gibbo now calls home, discovering growths and the shapes muscle-like tendrils melding with other organic materials. That organic material being the crew of the Beirda D. As Kaz travels deeper and throughout the oil rig, it is quickly discovered that the shape they drilled up and roused from the depths is turning some of the crew into monsters. Gibbo, Trots, Muir, Rennick, Adair, whereas the others have been impaled or melded into the shape, almost being absorbed as they call out for people they once knew. Some turn into something else, living, breathing creatures with memories. Moving along quite a bit in the story, the game progresses as Kaz just wants to escape the oil rig with Roy, his best friend, but at every turn the oil rig is collapsing, cutting him off and falling apart, the ways of escape becoming fewer and fewer. As more travesties begin to pile up, and more things begin to prevent Kaz from escaping, the effects of the shape are becoming stronger. If you remember, I mentioned the oil spill effect in the flashbacks, and them being not just flashbacks. As the story progresses, Kaz begins receiving phone calls, but they're from Susan, his wife. But these aren't flashbacks this time. They're phone calls that he is hearing. So he thinks that is Susan talking to him directly, but these phone calls are only connected to those on the oil rig. The shape is emitting a hallucinogenic-like effect. It is no longer just memories or flashbacks, but things that the person who is affected believe are there, when in reality they are not. The phones aren't connected to anything outside of the oil rig, and so Kaz is hearing no one on the other line. The oil rig becoming undone, the shape growing and overtaking and rooting the Beirda D. Finley and Brody discuss through notes of what needs to be done to stop this, and in the finale of the game, Kaz has to stop the shape from reaching the mainland, the only way they know how. Now, in Siren's Rest, the DLC of the base game, Still Wakes the Deep, is 11 years later. The Beirda D is now a groaning steel catacomb interred in the inky depths of the North Sea, and we now play as Mary, a deep-sea diver who is recovering the remains and personal belongings of those 187 meters below sea level, and is eager to get into the water, seemingly with something to prove, or something to find. Her job starts as usual as she delves deep into the wreckage and finds her first body to identify, the body of a man named Cor Vanderbilt, who was the deputy of a worker named Muir, who became one of the monsters. Mary slowly uncovers certain events that happened in the base game, such as the loss of the lifeboats, the destruction of the helicopters, and much more. As she delves deeper into the oil rig's remains and avoiding falling debris and other hazards, her flashlight begins to flicker. Something is affecting the battery as something moves away from her, and the flashlight goes back to being fully operational. Seemingly, this thing that is near her is affecting the electronics. She progresses further, and after finding the bodies of two brothers, one trying to save the other, Mary finds an air pocket, which she disconnects from her umbilical, which is providing her a stream of air supply, and removes her helmet to see if the air is breathable, quickly finding out that it is not, as she begins coughing and puts back on her helmet. Pushing onward, she finds the aftermath of some of the shape. It's now gray and fossilized, which has her question how coral could have grown down here and at this location. Reaching marine control, she finds more masses of the now fossilized shape. Crew remains melded into it, as it's almost appearing as new growth or other organic life is growing off of it or from it. Just as she's about to leave marine control, having retrieved the data logger, some falling debris knocks her out. She finds herself experiencing a vision, not a flashback, where she is on the Isle of Skye, though very brief, as she is pulled out of it into the remains of marine control and trying to get her bearings to find her way back. Carried by a strong current, she ends up close to the diving bell, but is running out of oxygen fast, as she is still disconnected from her umbilical. Before she swims back, though, she sees a falling flare and further remnants of the Beirda D. Once inside, she informs her co-diver Rob and mentions she has a puncture. Rob expresses worry that she breathed in the air and that Mary is having the narcs, or nitrogen narcosis, also known as depth intoxication or the rapture of the deep. It is a change in consciousness and neuromusculature function caused by breathing compressed inert gases at depths. This can cause poor judgment, short-term memory loss, trouble concentrating, a sense of euphoria, disorientation, reduced nerve and muscle function, hyper-focusing on a specific area, and hallucinations. Some of these symptoms which could disguise themselves under the shape, especially hallucinations. Or perhaps it's nothing. Moving on, Mary and Rob listen to a recording from the data logger and hear the distressing sounds of Rennick's voice shouting at McCleary. The oil rig collapsing, and what sounds to be an explosion, which is most likely the final act McCleary made to stop the shape. This recording causes Mary great distress. She wanted someone to try. Before cutting herself off, Rob mentions that he wouldn't have had a chance. Mary has a deeper connection, it seems, to the Beirda D, but we'll learn more about that later. As she delves deeper into the depths, her umbilical becomes trapped and she has to disconnect once again as Rob tells her to find the auxiliary exit Her flashlight stops working as Mary soon discovers that something is in the remains of the Beirda D, but she's not sure what. Meeting through a crack in the wall, Rob gives Mary flares. Mary must push on to finding an exit. Along the way, she finds oversized human remains from the mutations that the shape has made of some of the crew, such as Rennick. Mary, swimming deeper into the dark depths, begins hearing Rob's voice through her umbilical, but if you recall, she has disconnected from that some time ago. The shape, without her knowing, is getting into her head with prolonged exposure, much like it did with Kaz. Soon after one of the monster's crew falls through the ceiling, she escapes through an exit hatch door and is seemingly transported back to 1975 on a deserted oil rig. She hears her father calling, her father being Brody, one of the last 3 survivors of the Beirda D in the base game, who sacrificed himself to help Kaz reignite the flare stack, a safety mechanism used to burn off excess flammable gases that are produced during oil and gas extraction. She finds a photograph of her father sitting on a bench on the Isle of Skye. Isle of Skye being her hallucination she had before. Flashing back to reality, she manages to find an exit, once again needing to swim back to the bell on barely any oxygen, where the creature finds her and smashes into the bell, causing it to come crashing down further into the wreckage. Rob, having not been at the bell, and the bell now destroyed anyway, she sets off to find him, navigating around the creature using light from the flares as a distraction. To escape from the creature and her oxygen running low, she swims for a door that transports her once again to the Isle of Skye. Walking the path and seeing her father, she makes her way to him and they talk. Her father seemingly wants her to stay with him, to dive together in the deep. At this point, other figures appear near them. Figures that could be assumed to be the crew of the Beirda D. Here, she must make a choice, to take his hand and stay, delving into the deep, or refuse and be pulled back by Rob, thus ending the DLC. It is unknown if they actually make it to the surface. The shape is even more unknown. Aside from the few effects we see it has on the crew, organic life and electrical equipment, as flashlights and the electronics on the oil rig all break down and stop working, becoming unreliable at best. The organic matter of the crew almost being absorbed by the shape, and based off of the last cutscene with Mary and Brody, it's almost as if it is a hive mind, gathering thoughts, memories. The disorienting effects it has on its victims is that of it getting into your head, either cosmically, or perhaps emitting something, such as what Finley mentioned, an oil or something, that upon contact might infect someone. I wanted to use this video to discuss my own thoughts on it, and how though this creature is unknown, we don't know if it is an eldritch beast from an unknown universe, an ancient primordial being that was sealed in rock long ago, or even an alien from the stars, much like the Thing. This entity takes many inspirations from things that we do know, such as the Thing, and for me personally, it reminds me of The Color Out of Space, the H.P. Lovecraft story, movie, and even a TTRPG creature in the game Call of Cthulhu. It seemingly absorbs life and affects people with an almost madness-like quality, all the while emitting bright lights and mind-bending colors, affecting the person who is seemingly going mad. With my closing thoughts, I'd like to say though, I thoroughly enjoyed the game and the DLC, and did a playthrough of both on the channel, so feel free to enjoy those for yourselves if you'd like to sink your teeth and tendrils deeper into Still Wakes the Deep. I want to keep this video fairly brief just to see if people enjoy me making this kind of content. I'm sure I have much to learn on this style of video, so feel free to leave some constructive criticism in the comments section, and if people enjoy, maybe we'll go further into breaking down specific things in-game, such as creatures or characters, or discuss more lore and theories. Let me know your thoughts, as I'd love to hear them. Don't forget to subscribe for more horror, demos, and indie games, and possible future lore and theory videos, and hopefully I see you all in the next video. See you then.